everybody, and welcome back to Carrick-o-Rede Travels. Now, if you've been following along with my blog and my social media, you already know that I went to Ireland in October. But if you didn't see this, we actually hit two countries while we were there because we spent a full day in Northern Ireland as well. Now, I was not always aware of the difference here, but Ireland and Northern Ireland are two different countries. And so we were able to visit Northern Ireland for one day from Dublin with a tour that we took with Viator. So today I want to tell you guys about that tour because it was so beautiful. Like, I really enjoyed Dublin, but I think this day trip to the Belfast area was probably my favorite just because of all the natural beauty we got to see. So today I want to tell you guys about this specific tour and how you can take it by yourself, and also how you could book the same tour through Viator if you're interested. Now, before we dive into this all the way, I do want to clarify kind of why we ended up in Northern Ireland instead of just exploring more in Ireland, because there is so much natural beauty in Ireland. And I've had a lot of people ask, like, did you go see the Blarney Stone or the Cliffs of Moher? And so I kind of wanted to explain why we ended up in a different country instead of just going across to the other coast. And the main reason is I did some research, and from what I read online, tours, most of these all-day tours from Dublin to, say, the Cliffs of Moher, never arrive at the right time to actually see the cliffs well. Apparently, when most of these tours arrive, there is sunshine in your eyes or there's fog, and so that beautiful picturesque view that you've probably seen a million times in photos, you're not going to get that because you're there at the wrong time of day. And I thought that just was too big of a risk to take. I wanted somewhere where we could really see those beautiful views. And I also read that a lot of these tours only give you like 30 minutes at the cliffs. And so you stop at a lot of different things throughout the day, but there's really not a lot to do there besides a short walking path and the visitor center. And so I wanted to do something that had a lot more. And so my research led me to the Giant's Causeway, and I found several sources that said trips from Dublin to the Giant's Causeway are typically better because you arrive at a better time of day. And so based off of that, I found a tour that gave us about 2.5 hours to explore there, and things kind of went from there. So that is why we chose to go to Belfast from Dublin, and why I would generally recommend you do as well. Although I have not personally been to the Cliffs of Moher and had that negative experience, this is what I found from some experts online. And with that said, let's go ahead and talk about the tour. So generally, I'm the kind of person that likes to plan things on my own. I'm not always the biggest tour person. One, because you just never know what you're going to get. Two, because I like to take things at my own pace and kind of build my own itinerary. But with this particular trip, we did not rent a car. So we really didn't have a good way to get to Belfast without either booking a tour or paying like a crazy taxi fare to take us there, because it is a few hours away, and that would have just been an outrageous sum of money. So we ended up booking a tour with all-day transportation, a knowledgeable guide, and several stops in the Belfast area. So like I mentioned, we booked this tour through Viator, and I've used them a few times in the past and just generally been very happy with the tours that we got. And also, I really like their cancellation policies. Like, if something comes up, you can cancel 24 hours before for a full refund. And I've just been happy with the tours we have booked through Viator. So I felt fairly confident booking this tour. Now, the specific company that we went with was called Finn McCool Tours, and they do have their own website that is a little bit cheaper to book than it is through Viator. I'm sure there's some upcharge fees there, but I think Finn McCool charges maybe $72 before taxes, and Viator was $88 with all taxes and fees. So I felt very comfortable booking that tour through Viator. I probably would feel pretty good booking it straight through Finn McCool Tours now that I've gone and done it and was generally happy with the service we got. And now that we've got all of the background info out of the way, let's actually talk about this tour. So like I said, we went from Dublin to Belfast, and we actually went above Belfast a little bit to the coastal area there. And so we were gone for about 13 hours. We actually met up with our tour group at 6:45 in the morning on a Sunday. There was no one on the streets because everyone in Dublin stayed up till about 3 a.m. partying, and I know that because we could hear them outside our hotel window. So needless to say, we were very tired. But we met up with our tour group at 6:45, got on our bus, and our guide and bus driver were Mark and Noshan. They did a fantastic job, and we just really enjoyed what they added to our tour. So the first part of our day was spent sleeping. We had a very nice bus, and it had reclining seats and curtains, and so since it was still dark outside, we conked out for like 2 hours while we hit the road. I woke up a few times and kind of saw the sun coming up, and we were passing some fields and sheep and stuff, but they let us just kind of nap until we made our first stop, which was actually just a gas station, but that was our chance to get breakfast, and they had a Subway in there, so we grabbed some sandwiches for lunch. And after that, Mark actually started up his commentary about Northern Ireland and started filling us in on the things we were going to see. So obviously this is when things really started to pick up because we were awake. Mark was giving us his commentary, and we started to pass some really interesting stuff, and it was daylight, so we could actually see it. So we went through Belfast. We didn't stop quite yet, but we could see the city. We passed Ballymena, which is apparently where Liam Neeson is from, and he's one of my favorite actors. So that was really cool. And we just passed a few different things where Mark gave us fun facts and filled us in on the political climate between Northern Ireland and Ireland, which is very interesting, but also kind of sad. It's always disappointing to hear when a couple people groups can't get along. That was also, I felt like, very helpful background information for us to understand the country as well. And so then we finally made it to our first stop on our itinerary, which was the Dunluce Castle. Now this is an absolutely gorgeous ruin on a cliffside. It is absolutely picturesque. It's what you think of when you think of a castle ruin, at least for me. This is exactly what I think of. And so we didn't get to tour it, which you can tour it on your own if you go and stop. We only had time for a quick photo stop from the cliff kind of across from it, but it was so beautiful. It's been used in a few different filming scenarios. It's most popularly known for the Game of Thrones series. They did something with it there, but it is so pretty. And so that was the very first stop on our trip. The very next stop was the Giant's Causeway, which was the whole reason for going on this venture, and they gave us 2.5 hours to explore here. Now, I will be doing a whole video on the Giant's Causeway later because it deserves it. It's just such a gorgeous spot, and there's more to do than I realized. So that'll be coming soon, but today I just kind of want to give you a quick overview of what the Giant's Causeway is. And so if you've never heard of the Giant's Causeway, it honestly kind of looks like aliens came and played around on the shoreline here. It's got these basalt columns that rise up out of the ground at all different levels. Some of them just tower above you. Some of them kind of look like a ripple, but they're all kind of hexagonal shaped. So they almost look like pixelated from above. It's just fascinating how they make these rock formations. And so on the sea level, you can walk around on these stones and you can climb up the piles that the columns make, and it just makes for some really cool pictures. You get really nice views, but there's also some clifftop trails that you can walk across, and I highly recommend that. We spent probably a good half to 2/3 of our time just walking across the top of the cliffs because the views are absolutely amazing. You can look down on those columns and there's just some gorgeous viewpoints from up top. So we probably could have spent another hour there. We ended up a little rushed at the end, but this was by far my favorite stop just because of how gorgeous it was. The only downside was there were so many people, and it's no surprise because this is a very popular spot. It is pretty well known, but there were people everywhere, and some of them were very rude, just not moving out of the way, because you do have to actually climb a little bit for some of these, and so a lot of times people just sat down in like the safest path and wouldn't move for other people to get around, or they would just hog the best spots and they wouldn't let anyone else get pictures. So that was a little disappointing, but overall, gorgeous experience, and stay tuned because I will tell you more about that probably in the new year. Our next stop was the Carrick-o-Rede Rope Bridge, and this was actually another just mostly photo stop for us, but if you're on your own taking this general tour, you can actually purchase tickets to go park by the bridge and cross it onto the little island. But with our group, we just saw it from the scenic viewpoint, but it was still so gorgeous. This is a very famous photo spot, and I can definitely see why. This island out in the ocean is just covered with this beautiful emerald green grass, and this little rustic rope bridge is leading across. Like, it's very picturesque. So it was a fun stop, even though it was rather short, and Mark filled us in on some background of the bridge, and it was just a great little in-between stop. Now, this is actually the only point in our entire trip to Ireland and Northern Ireland when it started to rain. So we got our pictures, we listened to Mark for a couple minutes, and then we wimped out and we went back on the bus. So unfortunately, I didn't get to enjoy this spot quite as much, but it was still very, very pretty. It would have been a lot of fun to go across the bridge as well, but we had to keep going because we were headed to the Dark Hedges. Now, this is another very famous photo and video spot. It tends to show up in kind of haunting scenarios, I feel like, but it's also rather well known for the Game of Thrones series, according to the interwebs. But I know I've seen it in a few other different things, and I do have to say they were not as impressive in real life. I feel like maybe they do some CGI with the filming stuff. They were cool and unusual in their own way, but I did not feel like they really lived up to all the pictures I had seen of them. But for what they were fun to visit, and I think to an extent the effect was kind of once again ruined by the number of people there. I think when you see these pictures of the Dark Hedges, it's always just this very dark, lonely, kind of spooky looking avenue, and when you have 45 people walking all around it, it kind of ruins that effect. So that's one of those things where you just kind of find out what's reality and what's not, but it was still fun to be able to experience it. The very last stop on our itinerary was Belfast, which is the capital of Ireland. And we had a few hours to kill here, and so we spent quite a little bit of time at the beginning just wandering around and looking at the architecture. They had some beautiful buildings, and there's just a really wide variety of architectural styles, and I always find that really fascinating, and so we really enjoyed that. We made a stop by the Dirty Onion, which is the oldest building in Belfast. It is a pub and restaurant. They had live music going, and it was a very interesting kind of open air feel with almost like it felt like a warehouse in the back, or like what was a warehouse. It was very interesting, but it's an old building. We found like a cute alleyway with umbrellas over it and a bunch of different signs. We walked along the waterfront, saw the bridges, and On the kind of downside, it was Sunday, so really the only things open were churches and pubs. So we couldn't really check out like the local businesses like we'd been doing in Dublin, but they did also have a mall that was open, and so we popped in there to check it out because it had an observation center on the top. And so you could take the elevator up to the top of this mall. It was free, and there's this big glass dome, and you can look out at the city. And so that was really beautiful as well. 360-degree views there. And then we popped down and got some coffee and this little jiggly pink pastry. We had no idea what it was, but it was delicious. And so most of our time in Belfast was very observational, but I would definitely be interested in going back and kind of experiencing more of their food and the culture there and shopping around a little bit as well. So around 4 o'clock, we met back up with our bus, and Mark and Noshan took us back to Dublin to wrap up our tour. It was another couple hours back to Dublin, so we slept again for quite a bit of that, but Noshan did a great job giving us just a smooth and quiet bus ride, so we were able to rest a little bit. And they dropped us back off at the city center around 7:30 to wrap up our tour. Now, all of the stops I mentioned on this trip, you can visit on your own if you have a car. Some of them do have entrance fees, which in our case, everything was covered that we did, but you could buy a ticket to the Carrick-o-Rede Rope Bridge, to Dunluce Castle. You could spend longer at the Giant's Causeway. So if you wanted to do this on your own, you have that liberty. It is a very long trip, so if you were to do this on your own, I would recommend that you maybe spend the night in Belfast, or maybe you do your time in Dublin and then you move up that way. I don't know that personally I would want to do that 13-hour day with driving, but that's just me. So you can do all that. It's not restricted to tour groups or anything like that, and it would be fairly cost effective to do it on your own, but I did really like what Mark's commentary added to the trip. I thought that was very helpful to get all of that extra information. And again, it was nice just to not have to worry about navigating the roads, especially since I'm used to driving on one side of the road and they drive on the other side of the road. There was no stress factor there. And so for me, I really did feel that it was worth it to book the tour to not have that stress factor. But that choice is up to you. You have the information, so you could decide what option will be best for you. And that just about sums it up. Thank you so much for watching this video. As always, every single view means the world to me as a very small content creator here. So thank you for watching this video to this point. If you enjoyed it, if you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Leave any comments or questions that you have. I love hearing from you guys. And if you're not subscribed to Carried Away Travels, please do that before you go. That would be absolutely awesome. If you want more information on this tour, if you want to read a little bit more, I do have a blog post about it at cochraneriding.com. You can read that there. I will also have links to the Viator tour we booked in that blog post. I will also put it in the caption here just so you have easy access to that as well. Once again, thanks so much just for being here and watching this video, and I wish you many happy travels. Bye.